Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we are doing on Tuesday evening here in Europe. Joining me in Europe from Munich, Germany, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody. From across the pond.
What did you just say?
So, hello, everybody from across the pond.
Oh, across the pond. I thought you said something about a pint. Joining us from Tuesday afternoon in Dallas, Texas is Van MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Bontemps has had a few of those pints following old K-Bon's Instagram, and a lot better beer than the tinkle water that he usually drinks back over here.
Well,
I've had a lovely time in Munich.
So I gotta say, I've been in Paris for I think a week now, just under a week. Team USA has played its first game, beating Serbia on Sunday, which we'll talk about in a minute. Play South Sudan on Wednesday. I have to say, so the geography of what's going on here, the basketball games are being played about 150 kilometers, give or take, from Paris in Lille, the northern part of the country. What's that?
Speak American. Nobody knows how long a freaking kilometer is.
Yeah, it's like a 2 hour and 20-minute drive, unless you have Pierrick, who makes it in less than 2. Pierrick, last night, as we zoomed past the Team USA women's bus on the way back from Lille, completely leaving the women's bus in the dust, with they had like 4 cops on motorcycles escorting it. He laughed and said, "Those cops wish they could pull me over." Ha 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 ha, and went zooming past. The other day, after Team USA's game, I'm pretty sure Team USA left maybe a few minutes before us, and we beat Team USA to their hotel by 45 minutes. I did an interview with Steve Kerr after the game, after the team got back to Paris, and we were 40 minutes-ish or so ahead of them. So Pierrick, let's just say he stays in the left lane. let's just leave it like that. Anyway, so the Team USA is staying in Paris, for a number of different reasons, including the fact that they want the players to be able to go to the other events and be with the other Americans. But it's just been a little logistical thing. And when all this was explained and understood like a year ago, I was really bummed, because it was, going to be a major logistical problem. At the end of the day, who cares? If you're watching the games, you don't care. In fact, 11 million fans I saw watched the game in the U.S. On Sunday. Tremendous ratings. So I didn't really talk about it. But what I want to say is how wonderfully charming the town of Lille is. It's a spectacular, beautiful town. Is totally enjoyable spending time there. And the stadium and venue that they're having this at is a soccer stadium. And when I saw what they had to do to create this basketball arena in the soccer stadium in a retractable dome that had no air conditioning, I was like, what are they doing? I was like, it was a classic Olympic boondoggle, I thought. And it's a spectacular venue for Olympic basketball. It would never fly as an NBA venue because there's no premium seating, but it is absolutely amazing in that gym. 27,000 fans are in there. It is a crazy great environment. They are pumping in enormous amounts of air conditioning. I wasn't in the building today when it was almost 100 in France, so we'll see about tomorrow when it's also going to be warm. But the Olympics right now for the basketball are absolutely awesome. And if you had a chance to get over to Lille, if you're coming or whatever, or you've been here, you talked to anybody, I can't imagine. I mean, other than the fact there's a little annoyance and just, moving a lot of people around, because that's what happens when you're at these stuff, and the heat's up there. I think it's just been a tremendously awesome event. So I just want to say that. Despite the fact that
enough of the diplomat travel and leisure portion.
Well, it's not travel and leisure, buddy. I'm getting back at 3 a.m. Trust me, ain't no leisure. But
it's too much.
Brian never has any leisure, McMahon. You should know that by now. It doesn't matter what's going on. There's no leisure.
I actually did have
difficult.
I did have a good, interesting night tonight here in Paris. I went to an event where I got to try out this new Nike recovery shoe.
Just remember, everybody, no leisure. No leisure at all.
I was
We're
working.
just we're getting prototype
Recovery, but not leisure.
shoes. That's right. That's right.
I was working. It was an industry event.
Ooh.
I don't go to get free stuff. That's not what I do. I was wearing
Were they
not
giving that
NBA
any? I'll
shoes.
take it.
I know you would.
You solicit free stuff openly.
Size 13.
Anyway, this shoe that Nike is doing with this company called Hyperice, if you've ever had some of their gear, which is like they use they have compression leg sleeves, like you see players wearing them all the time. This company called Normatec that Hyperice owns, and Hyperice does those compression massagers. Well, they built a shoe with Nike, and the shoe has a compression in it and heat. And you put the shoe on, and this is like brand new. There's only been like 30 pairs invented, and I think like 20 of them are on Team USA, men and women. I think LeBron put his on Instagram recently. You put it on your foot and you press a button. This is like Nike of old, like with innovation. And it wraps around your Achilles tendon and like gets to 160 degrees and like presses compression on it and then pulls it back, presses compression on it and pulls it back. And like, I thought it was mildly interesting. And then I actually wore it and it was like, whoa. And it's designed for athletes, which I think the players are doing it to like wear them like to the game or away from the game, like on the bus or on the plane. And like I wore it for like 20 minutes. My Achilles tendon feels spectacular. I actually put my shoes back on and my shoes were loose because it like made my foot smaller. So I was like, damn, I don't know. I'm just telling you, that's what I did tonight.
You get a pair?
Then he had a leisure
They're
to
not
walk
available.
back in his freshly compressed shoes.
It was not, they're not available on the market, I don't think, for a few more months, but it is definitely it's the first time in a while where I've seen innovation where I've been like, oh, this is actually something that might be cool. I can't believe how hot it gets in there. Like in like 2 seconds. Anyway, that was what I did tonight. But let's talk about Team USA. I thought they played spectacular against Serbia. I really did think Serbia, and I still do, if there's a team here that can beat the U.S., I think there's a couple of teams that have it within them to beat the U.S. I think Serbia is one of them. I know that sounds laughable now that the U.S. has beaten them by over 20 points twice in 2.5 weeks. I know that they played pretty awesome basketball in that game. But Serbia was up 19-4. They were up 10-2 and 19-14. And the US
I think the fact that Team USA has won multiple games by huge margins against Serbia is proof that they are concerned about Serbia. It goes back to what we talked about the other day, that those are the two games in particular in this run-up, and the Canada game, the other team that I think is a real threat. Because as we will talk about, I think France is proving they are not a real threat to do anything serious in this tournament. Those are the two teams that, even though Team USA didn't play great in that first game in Vegas, they were engaged in the game and made sure to shut down the Canadian star guards. And you saw in the Serbia game, they respect and I think fear to some level, certainly Nikola Jokic, and they respect and I'm sure fear to some level the Canadians, because those guys have star level NBA players. And if they play those teams throughout this tournament, I think you're going to see A+ effort from these guys like we did the other night.
Yeah, it was the reason that the spread was what it was because the U.S. shot the lights out from 3-point range.
Well, and because Joker sat down for however few minutes he sat down, it was his plus minus was 0, and it was a 27.
And because Kevin Durant came back, right? To go back to our conversation about Kevin Durant, like Kevin Durant's the greatest ever American Olympian basketball player. And we saw why again in this first game, because he's built to play in FIBA. He's the greatest scorer who's ever played He could shoot it from anywhere. Nobody can guard him in these games. And this it's closer in 3-point line, especially for a guy who likes to shoot 20-footers anyway. Might as well be layups for him. I mean, he's just absolutely ridiculous. He hadn't played in a month. He walks in and he hits every shot and looked like he hadn't missed a day.
Yeah, I wrote a piece that published on ESPN.com on Tuesday where I talked about the thing about Durant when you talk to people with USA basketball, and I mean this is not something this is something he's done throughout his whole career, not just when he's come back from injuries. But the thing that really stood out to them over the last week is that Durant, when he practices full speed. And I know that that's like, if you're sort of a novice or a purist, you'd say, well, of course you practice full speed. Why wouldn't you practice full speed? But that doesn't happen for pro athletes. It certainly doesn't happen in the course of a long NBA season. And a lot of times it wouldn't happen when you're coming back from injury. But one of the things about Durant that we've seen repeatedly throughout his career, Steve Kerr's talked about it a lot, is how he returns from injury so strongly. And, you ask Team USA people and they go, well, you should have seen him practicing. And LeBron even said it. I used a quote from LeBron in the story. He's like, he practices harder than he plays. And so, one of the, a couple of the big takeaways I have from being with Team USA now for a month. One is that Durant was absolutely miserable, abjectly miserable when he was out and not playing. He had
there are a few people that like things more than Kevin Durant likes playing basketball.
Yes.
And when he's not playing basketball, he gets very grumpy.
And I have to tell you, I don't know if I've ever seen Kevin happier than he was on Sunday night. And I'm talking about the nights when he won championships too. Because when he won those championships with the Warriors, he won 1-4-0 and 1-4-1. Like they knew they were winning. The idea, he had gotten comfortable with the idea it was about to be a champion. It didn't sort of surprise him. I don't think he knew how he was going to play. I mean, maybe he had confidence because he's a confident guy, but he's coming in. He hadn't played full speed 5-on-5. He obviously played full speed in practice, but not full up and down court 5-on-5. He hadn't played that since April, since the Suns got eliminated by the Wolves. And so he just, he's coming off the bench for the 4th time in his career. He's like, I leaned on those other times when I came off the bench, but come on, he's like never done it in his life.
When was the last time?
I don't know, but that's what he said. He said, I leaned on those times. I was like, really? You leaned on those 3 times out of 1,700 games?
He leaned on being the greatest scorer to ever play on
That's
a basketball
right.
court,
Yeah.
and just stepped out there and did his thing. Well, and you meant just a real quick, Brian. I'm curious because I don't know if we've talked about this over the last week or so when you've been around them. I know I talked about it after being with the team in Vegas. Really stood out to me, especially having spent time around most of these guys over the course of their careers, in some cases a lot of time, how genuinely excited everybody was to be part of this particular team with this particular group of guys. Do you think that is any part of the way Durant was feeling the other day, that he was finally able to
Yes,
take part?
absolutely. Absolutely. But I also think he was just genuinely thrilled that he had played great. And I know that that's like, well, of course, I mean, hello, he's played great for his whole life. Yeah, I get that. But I'm telling you, Kevin was walking on air after that performance. He was so happy. It was actually because I know that Durant is a guy who sometimes struggles at times to truly be happy. It was awesome to watch Kevin Durant be 100% genuinely thrilled. And being around him after the game, like he was so happy he was doing Serbian TV. He was like, oh, I'll talk to Serbian TV. Let's go. That was my one takeaway. The other thing I'm going to say is, one of the things that people always ask me is, okay, well, what super teams are coming out of here? What, like, who's like buddying up? Who's whispering at their dinners like, we're going to team up together.
KD to Minnesota. Start it now.
Guys, Ant Edwards is trailing Kevin Durant around like a big brother.
I mean,
Like,
during the playoffs, when he was talking all that trash to KD, that is like a sign of respect from Anthony Edwards. That's what he said. Hey, like, this is my favorite player of all time.
I mean, yeah, he said it 100 times in Vegas too. I mean, he's just like, I mean, and understandably so, just unabashedly a fan of him. I asked him at one point, actually, I said, I don't know if you've ever said, or at least that I've heard, why you are a Kevin Durant fan. And he said, well, I went to a game in Atlanta and it was a Thunder game and Kevin was playing and I watched him and I was like, that's my favorite player. I said, that's a pretty good
A
reason.
game and that guy's really awesome.
Yeah,
And I
that's right.
like watching that dude play.
Yeah, I was like, that's a good answer,
that's
man.
the thing about Ant, is that he gives the way Ant answers questions is exactly how he feels.
He doesn't have a filter.
It's
No,
also exactly how he plays.
Usually
I
for
know.
better, occasionally for worse. The man
Yeah.
is without filter.
He's
By the way,
not
KD, the
Yeah.
3 times he came off the bench was 2021 when he was coming back from that Achilles. There's a few times during that season.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. Thank you. So Ant isn't a perfect fit for this team because he doesn't always move the ball on offense.
That's a nice way to put it.
That's one way to put it.
But he does work hard on defense, and he is so explosive offensively that he's good to have out there.
Is Jayson Tatum a good fit for this team?
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
I was
But
going to say Jayson Tatum and Steve Kerr will not be teaming up, but that's just a bad joke.
let me just say that, like, literally Ant gets off the bus with Durant when they warm up, like before practice, like Ant is standing next to Durant. Like, I think they I haven't been in the locker room, but I'm pretty sure they probably have lockers together. Like, Ant cannot get enough of him.
Has Ant
And
given out any nicknames? He tends to be good with the nicknames. There was
I'll ask him.
the bite thing with Conley. Austin Rivers was, I think, Macaroni Tony. There's been a few others.
Yeah, well, you saw that photo that went viral, where Ant was dunking on Durant in practice last week. And it actually was an indication that Durant goes hard in practice,
Yeah, right. If you're challenging Ant at the rim, like he's going to dunk and you're trying to contest.
That's right.
Like, that's going hard.
Yeah, and Durant, had fun with it because he's extremely online, and he tweeted the photo out. It said, "I tried, Jennifer."
Yeah.
The reference to the CJ McCollum trope. But Ant was like, yeah, he's like, he knew what the consequences were. And there was a play, I had to go look it up, but there was a play, and I guess in game 4 of that Suns Wolves series, where Ant got loose in the half court and Durant made a business decision and Ant dunked. And he was like, yeah, man. He goes, this time he had to take the thrashing. He had to take it like a man. Like, he trash talks him, as you know, but like out of 100% pure love.
Absolutely. Which is not why I trash talk Bontemps, just for the record.
Right. So anyway, being around this team has been like following a rock band. They're going to all these places, setting all these records.
Had 10 million people watch the game the other day.
Yeah.
There were more people who watched that game than game 4 of the finals. Now, a 3-0 finals lead had something to do with that, but still, that's a pretty incredible.
Hey, still a heck of a thing.
Yeah, it is something to watch. And look, I mean, you watch Durant hit those shots. The team is genuinely excited for him. So, well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Serbia had their spirits broken a little bit. I don't think Serbia really cared about losing the exhibition game, of course.
Yeah.
Serbia took that one on the chin. They got a shiner.
And
from that one.
The whole game changed when KD got off the bench. Serbia got off to a great start, and KD came in, and what he hit had 5 buckets in like 8 minutes.
Do we think he's starting the next game?
I do think he's going to start. I don't know for sure. I do think he's going to start, and I suspect that Booker might come off the bench. The only reason why I think he might not start is because they may want to
limit his minutes,
get a stagger. They just want to get a stagger just so. I don't think it really matters whether he starts or not, but South Sudan's a very different team than Serbia, extremely different. They have much better athleticism. They put 5 3-point shooters on the floor, spread the floor, drive and kick. The wings are, switch wings are going to be required a lot more in that game. So that may affect how Kerr wants to set his lineup. So
Right.
we'll see. As far as Tatum not playing,
Mhm.
I'm not going to defend the decision.
I'll
Because
defend it. It's not a criticism of Jayson Tatum. Look, I would have played Jayson Tatum, but at the end of the day, like Tyrese Halliburton didn't play. He's an all NBA guard. If Jayson Tatum played, then say Bam Adebayo didn't play. He's an all NBA center.
Well,
Like
the
if
idea
Devin
of-
Booker doesn't play, he's an all NBA guard. Like it essentially says Jayson Tatum playing or Devin Booker playing. Like if Devin Booker didn't play, like, okay, like this is maybe the best team we've ever seen from a talent perspective. Some really awesome players are going to play. Like, what are we doing?
Well, and the idea like you're supposed to give him a couple courtesy minutes. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like,
I don't
listen,
I
Jason
don't
Tatum's a
think so
heck of a
either.
player, but
Well-
he's not Kevin Durant. He's not LeBron James. He's not Steph Curry. I mean, he is a second-tier superstar who, he was left out of the mix for this one game, and Kerr has told you that he will play against South Sudan, and so there's probably going to be another really awesome player who's
Yeah,
left out.
that's the team is awesome. Like nobody's talked at all about Tyrese Halliburton just getting benched. It's like he's an awesome player.
Well, and,
Like,
and you can't say, well, bench Derek White. It's a different. This is not. Hey, who's the better NBA star? It's who's a better fit in the rotation of a team that's trying to
Right.
win games and wasn't exactly like dominating the competition during the exhibition schedule.
Yeah. So look, I've said this on some TV shows. Just repeat myself. Team USA felt that Serbia was strongest at center and point and guard, not necessarily point guard, but guard. I mean, Bogdan Bogdanovic handles the ball, but and so they wanted to play 3 centers, which they rotated onto Jokic. Jokic was 8 of 15, as you mentioned earlier. It was a 0 plus minus. It wasn't like he had a bad game, but they kept him from scoring 35. And so that's Joel Embiid. And I agree that Embiid did not play well, but Embiid does not play the same position as Tatum.
Right.
And Embiid played 12 minutes. It wasn't like Embiid played 32 minutes. Embiid played 12 minutes. They were not effective 12 minutes.
Look, you can narrow the whole thing down to it was a choice between Devin Booker and Jayson Tatum. And if you say it that way, and
I
it's-
actually
if
don't
Devin-
think I don't think that's accurate. I think it was a choice between Derek White and Jayson Tatum.
Right, and then it gets
I mean,
back.
I
to,
don't-
hey,
I mean,
if-
sure,
if
I guess.
Serbia was going to beat Team USA, the guys who could do that are Joker, and you mentioned 3 centers, and Bogdanovic, and Derek White is much better equipped to defend Bogdanovic than Tatum is.
Yeah, I mean, like Devin Booker and Steph Curry are gonna play.
Maybe you would have said that about Jayson Tatum. This
Well,
is
I
my
know,
point.
right? But my point is, like, Tatum really comes down to where you want to put Bam Adebayo. So Bam Adebayo has been playing backup power forward. So that's kind of the role that Tatum would play, would be backup power forward. So if you're going to play Bam Adebayo, you're going to push Tatum up. And that's where it would squeeze Derek White. But Derek White was plus 15.
Well, and
He's plus
again,
15.
Devin Booker started at the 3. You could have started Jayson Tatum at the
And-
3 and then not
and-
played Devin Booker.
Yeah, I see what
That's
you're
all,
saying.
like, again, and
yeah.
I'm not criticizing it. It's like,
And
By
if
the way,
Tatum,
fine.
if Tatum can sit out a game, so can Booker. They're both
He might sit out a game.
They're
That's my
Right.
point. And it's,
but, like,
yeah, that's my
Tatum's
point. It's,
status, you can argue, is higher than Booker's. I mean, he is an NBA champion.
By the way, Booker might lose his starting job to Durant,
right.
and he had 12 points and 5 assists.
Yeah,
he might
I'm
lose
not
his
saying
starting-
I'm not saying that as any criticism of Devin Booker at all. I just like, this is just like, we're talking about awesome players not playing. This whole discussion, Derek White played over Tyrese Halliburton, who was an all NBA player, who the first half of the year before he hurt his hamstring, might have been one of the 5 best players in the league. And nobody said boo about that. Like, if the team is awesome, good players aren't going to play. Some
And-
awesome players are going to play in the next game. It is
And
what it is.
Kerr did come to him before the game and tell him he probably wasn't going to play. So we haven't had a chance to talk Jayson Tatum yet. Steve Kerr has given the team some time off, and access is a little bit limited here because of the crush in the international media, and really more than anything, the security. Team USA exists in a very heavy secure situation. Anybody who gets anywhere near Team USA when they're here at the Olympics, you're passing multiple layers of security. And so you can't walk up to players like you can in the NBA season.
And by the way, I didn't mean to cut you off, just about we're about to hear from him at some point. Jayson Tatum will be cool with it. Like Steve Kerr I'm not saying he's thrilled he didn't play. I don't mean it that way, but like he's there to win a gold medal. He's a good guy. He's a team guy. Steve Kerr came to him and said, hey, this is probably how it's going to go in this game. Like, I'm not saying he was, thrilled he didn't play. He also wouldn't cause any issue about it.
Well,
he'll be ready to play the next game and it'll be fine.
I certainly am not going to say that you're wrong. I would just say I would like to hear that from him instead of assumption. And not that he's going to rock the boat or anything, but I'd like to hear it out of his mouth, or whatever he thinks about it. And if he's upset, fine.
I just would be very surprised if it's anything. Haven't been around him for a long time. I'd be surprised if he said anything other than, look, might not have been thrilled about it, but we won the game by the way, that's the other thing. They won the game by 30.
I know. And I'm just going to say that, like, as I went through the TV, shows on Monday, what I found was the ex-players that I talked to on shows who are with us at ESPN were really the ones who were up in arms about it. I mean, I had to take that under advisement, the reaction of the players. The players really felt that it was an insult. So I'm talking about and I'm not just the NBA players, not just like Perk and Shanae, but also like the NFL players, because I was on some shows that had NFL players on and they weighed in too. And they were like, they were really critical of Kerr. So I have to take that under advisement that the players felt a certain way about it.
Well, then who shouldn't have played?
Well, I agree.
Play all 12, and you know what? Pass out orange slices at halftime and participate.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, come on here.
Well, and pretty much Kerr said this is the job. I didn't like it, and you can make fun of me or whatever, but this is the job. My job is to make hard decisions like this.
And the important thing when you're dealing with a team like this is that he went to the guy ahead of time and said, here's what the plan is today, right? Where you would have problems is if Jayson Tatum showed up for the game, didn't play, and then it's like, what the heck is going on, Steve? But if he comes to him the day before or the morning of, it's like, hey man, listen, I think we're going to go this way today. You'll be back in the next game. Jayson Tatum's a pro. He will deal with it. It will be fine. There won't be any issues. Like that's where Steve Kerr knows how to do the job, and that's the way how you handle it.
I would argue from start to finish, the victory over Serbia was the most impressive Team USA victory since 2016.
Yeah, for sure. They dominated one of the 3 or 4 best teams.
Their performances in Tokyo, even when they won, were shaky.
They were creaky the whole way through. They needed Durant and a couple others. Tatum played well, Jrue Holiday played well, but they needed to be bailed out of some of those games.
Yeah, and so I would say that was the type of performance I felt it was, and the idea that they're facing criticism really for anything off of it it's hard to square.
It's also the expectations that come with having a team like this. Like this is the nature of it. Like, this could be the biggest controversy they have to deal with, is just which guy isn't playing in each game.
Well, and also which guy wasn't the replacement. I mean, and both of them, one thing that's in common is that these are guys who are fresh off winning a championship. So there's a different level of spotlight and a different sort of status that comes along with it.
All right. So elsewhere in the Olympic tournament, Canada is a very impressive 2-0. They beat Australia. Australia has probably been the most upward team from the summer, where they're playing better than people thought they would. They are a really strong medal contender. The Canadians are in against the Australians. It's the group of death. The Greeks with Giannis is averaging like 30 points and they're 0-2. I think he's averaging like 28 points and he's shooting 67% and they're 0-2.
Yeah, their
Because,
team stinks around them. That's
because
fine.
they're the group of death. But Canada is down at the half today to Australia. Josh Giddey, and what I think is going to be again a repeatable thing that we see for 6 months, starting in October. Josh Giddey put up great numbers in a losing effort, but they put Lou Dort on Josh Giddey in the second half. That slowed him down, and I think the Australians were a little sick of Lou Dort because at one point Patty Mills absolutely body checked the heck out of
Oh,
him like it
yes,
was
he
a
did.
hockey, it was a hockey hit. But Shea did. Shea really had an average game. He was just 8 of 10 from the field with 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. Just an average game for Shea. Yeah, it was a terrific game. Probably the best game RJ Barrett's ever played for the national team. He had 24 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists.
Viva Dylan
And
Brooks shooting the ball well, baby.
yeah, Dylan Brooks, well, when he has a good shooting day, which he did in this one, he hit 3 threes. So a very strong win for the Canadians. They are 2-0 and definitely the second best most impressive team. With Australia, even at 1-1, still looking pretty good. The game of the tournament so far happened today between Japan and France.
Oh,
Not a game that we thought was going to happen this way. This was one of those games where if you watched it, is just a classically insane FIBA game.
man.
The Japanese, coming in, they were arguably out of the 12 teams, they were arguably the 10th or 11th, probably the 11th or 12th where you would rank them, depending on where you wanted to put, South Sudan or Puerto Rico. You could debate on those. And South Sudan beat Puerto Rico, so that's moot now. But the Japanese have a 5'6" point guard, and the French are starting 2 guys who are over 7 foot. And this game, oh, by the way, the Japanese Rui Hachimura was playing his best game ever for the national team. He had 24 points in 28 minutes, and he got ejected with 8 minutes to go in the game for having a second flagrant foul, second unsportsmanlike foul.
Yeah, and I get it, letter of the law. It was a weak ejection, though. What he did was he hacked Gobert to keep Gobert from going up and dunking. And he kind of gave a little extra tug on the elbow, and that's why they tossed him. But it wasn't like
he didn't understand that he had just committed a foul that was going to get him ejected. He was very surprised.
I thought it was a weak ejection. I didn't think it was a smart play, but I thought it was a weak ejection. Now he kind of cross-checked. I think it was Koulibaly earlier. He earned his first one. The second one was just like, man, come on.
Well, he gets ejected. So it's 8 with 8 minutes to go. He gets ejected. I think it was a 2-point game at that point. The Japanese have this 5'6", 23-year-old guard. I guess guard 5'6" guard is redundant. Yuki Kawamura. Yuki Kawamura was the MVP of the Japanese league this year, as a rookie, which says a lot, right? As 5'6", you could be the MVP of the league. He had 26 points in this game. 26 points, 7 rebounds
on 26 shots.
Oh, sorry, it's 26 in the regulation because he did have 3. 29 points. Yeah, he had 7 rebounds at 5'6". And Bontemps, you've been talking about it. For as good as France is, and Victor basically carried the French home in this game, to get dominated by a guy like this was not a good sign about where the French are. They did win, and they're 2-0.
Well, yeah, their guards just aren't good enough. They're just not good enough to be a serious threat to do anything. Like maybe they get into the medal round if they win their quarterfinal game, if they get the right matchup. I probably pick Germany to beat them right now in the final game in their group, which would mean they're playing a Team USA or somebody in, I don't know exactly or Canada. And I don't think they're beating those teams. Like the guards are just not good enough to play an international ball in particular. You've got to have really good guard play.
Well,
And the French guards are not good.
they got saved by your guy Yuka made a terrible foul. They're up. Japan's up
Yeah.
4 with how many seconds left?
Yeah. So basically what happens here is, so they lose Hachimura with 8 minutes to go, and the French playing in
Yeah.
front of 27,000 fans in their home country, and this includes Victor, got super duper tight.
Mm-hmm.
They just played tight. I mean, Evan Fournier is 5 of 18 shooting in this game. You know, they're to sort of, you know, tell you where they're at. They've got I think this guard, let me see how old he is. I think he's about to turn 22. He's 21, Matthew Strazel.
Yeah, he's the one who saved their butts.
They list him at 6 foot. I don't even think he's 6 foot. But they're relying on him to sort of deliver for them. But Victor was tight. Missed a couple.
Was not good.
Yeah, Ntilikina was a non-factor. They just were running no offense, and they just didn't score for like 5 minutes. And Japan got the lead, and they got up 4 basically thanks to Yuki Kawamura. And there's like 12, 14 seconds left, and France is down by 4 with the ball. We're talking about single-digit percentage chance of winning the game, and you're probably very low percentage chance of getting it to overtime. And the Japanese have a foul to give, and Yuki slaps
Matthew Strazel.
Strazel, and he makes a 3 for a 4-point play with 10 seconds left. And the crowd absolutely loses its mind. I was talking to one of our colleagues here in in Paris, and they were in a taxi, and the guy was listening to the game on the radio. And like the guy on the radio is screaming in French, obviously, and the taxi driver is screaming in French, like wild, you know, reactions. And he's like, "What happened? What happened? I don't know what happened." But obviously, you know, crazy moment that they force overtime, and then Victor scores, I think, the first 8 points in overtime.
Yeah, after he struggled offensively the whole second half. The other fascinating thing that happened in this game is for the vast majority of the second half, they went away from it late, and then they went away from it overtime. But they staggered their 2 bigs. Rudy Gobert did not start the second half, and when he subbed in, Victor came out, and Victor sat for 8 minutes at one point.
It was kind of wild. It was kind of wild to see that.
Okay, so you choose to play one big. And one thought I have there is I wonder how much input the French assistant Kenny Atkinson had in that decision. The one big lineup, prioritizing that, because that's something that could come into play. Cavs corner in Cleveland.
I don't know, man. I think when you're Vincent Collet is the longtime French coach. You know, they won the silver in the Olympics in Tokyo. Deciding to sit Victor Wembanyama down for 8 minutes, that's on the head coach.
Well, and honestly, deciding to sit Gobert, who, you know, is done, he's helped France win a lot of games,
Yeah,
win some medals. Gobert,
he's after Tony Parker, Gobert is the hero of French basketball.
Yeah, and the thing is, they didn't play great in the first half, but they had a little lead, and they lost it early on, and then they just never got back in any kind of rhythm really until overtime. And Gobert did have their best plus minus. He was a plus 12. And my thing is, like, I get, okay, you can talk about stylistically, you know, to play 2 7-footers together. Is that really going to work? And then obviously that's the way San Antonio started, and they adjusted and went with Vic as a lone big and worked a lot better. Here's the thing, though. These 2 guys are so clearly by far the best players on the roster. I don't think you really get to choose stylistically in this situation, because you need both those dudes on the floor as much as possible, because the drop-off is so massive from them.
Yeah, Germany is won tonight, and so they're 2-0. So that'll be a big game, France versus Germany. But we'll get a real idea of France's relative standing. They have not been super impressive here, but we'll get a really good idea of their standing when they play Germany in a couple of days here. All right. So obviously we'll be keeping a very close eye on this Olympic basketball tournament. Fascinating stuff. We're just getting started. A lot of basketball to play. There was some NBA business that went down since we last got together at the top of the list. And, we're so focused on the NBA. I haven't even asked Booker or Durant about this. It didn't even enter my mind to ask Durant about this. I was so focused on the way he played against Serbia. It didn't even enter my mind. But the Suns picked up one of the more significant moves of really the last 3-4 weeks, but certainly even in terms of, it's really surprising that it even happened. Bontemps, Tyus Jones takes a minimum to play for the Suns. This is the type of thing that the Suns really needed. They needed guards, and they needed guards who were willing to play for the minimum. And that bar is kind of hard to clear. And they got one of the best available guards on the market, and it came late and it came cheap. And it's a huge addition for them.
Yeah, I mean, there are two significant moves in recent days. Obviously, Tyus Jones moved to Phoenix, and then on Tuesday, Precious Achiuwa going to the Knicks, signing for $6 million to be the backup center behind Mitchell Robinson, a very important role for them, given all of Mitchell's injuries last year and the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein left in free agency to go to Oklahoma City. And yeah, look, for Tyus Jones, 10 up on a minimum. Obviously, we've seen a few guys, Gary Trent, some other guys get squeezed this summer because there just wasn't very much cap space available. Washington obviously went in a different direction, used their open space to get Jonas Valanciunas earlier this offseason, wasn't necessarily a fit. They draft Bub Carrington, who played great in Summer League. I think he's going to have a lot of time at the point this year in DC for a team that's certainly not interested in winning many games. And so Tyus Jones gets squeezed a little bit, and now he lands in Phoenix, where he will start. He will play a lot of minutes. And while there will be some issues with him in the playoffs because of his size, as we've seen in the past, for a team that needs innings to be eaten over the course of 82 games and to have as many effective players as they can with the limited amount of resources they have, to get him done for a minimum, like getting Mason Plumlee on a minimum, getting Tyus on a minimum, they've done a pretty good job rounding out that roster as best they can for Mike Budenholzer. And like that was a significant move for them, and getting Precious back for the Knicks was big, given the options that were available at backup center at this point for them.
No, I thought the Tyus Jones, the Suns thing was the best minimum signing of this summer. And it's interesting because they obviously went without a traditional point guard last year and have completely pivoted back. Not only do they have Tyus Jones on the roster, they have Monty Morris on the roster. Two guys who annually are among the best assist to turnover guards in the league. And look, they're not going to be explosive scorers. They, as you mentioned, with their size, there's going to be some issues defensively, but them being a disorganized mess offensively down the stretch of games, I think Tyus Jones solves that. Like I said, I had looked at him as a guy who, if I'm the Spurs, I would have seriously considered offering him decent money over 4 years to try to poach him. They went in a different direction and went short term with CP3, and obviously, drafted a kid in Castle who maybe he's the point guard of the future. But like the reason the Memphis Grizzlies were able to keep their heads above water so much during all the games that John Morant missed before last season is because Tyus Jones was playing high quality basketball as their starting point guard. Now, they promised him a starting job. That's part of the reason why he agreed to go there on the minimum. He's on the record saying basically, I'm going to be starting. I would argue that it would be in the Suns' best interest to get a primary defender in the starting lineup. To get like a Royce O'Neal alongside Booker and KD and Tyus Jones. I don't think I'd win that argument with Bradley Beal. I think if this is just about putting the best fits on the floor together, Bradley Beal would come off the bench. I would also be very surprised if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue they should have done that last year too at different points. I mean, they basically started Grayson Allen with that group all season. I mean, The only pushback I'd have on what you said there in any form, including finding a defender to be in there, because I do think that having the combination of Booker, Beal, and Durant and Tyus, frankly, at 1 to 4. I mean, if you have those guys at 1 to 4 and Yusuf Nurkic at 5, you have maybe 2 neutral guys, maybe at the 5 spots. Like you're asking Mike Budenholzer to do a lot of work
Well,
to get that team to be.
who's guarding the best player?
Yeah, I mean,
who's guarding Luca or or Shea or Steph or John Morant or there's somebody every night who's guarding the other team's best. Are you asking KD to do that? To do that? You asking Beal?
Well, that's why I think it's one of those things where maybe that's a good idea, but you're not starting that way in October.
No, and that's where you get to the playoffs and you figure it out. And probably Tyus won't be starting, I would assume, at some point in the playoffs because of his lack of size, which is why the only pushback I have in anything you said, I think Tyus is one of the best signings of the summer, getting him there for the minimum. I would say the best minimum signing was Gary Trent Jr. because he has the ability to potentially be a 30 to 35 minute a game guy in the playoffs at both ends, which Tyus, I've been a big Tyus fan for a long time. He's not a guy who's capable of doing that. That's the only pushback that I'd have on anything you said. It's a huge get for Phoenix on every level. And it does, with him being given this starting spot, open up some very real questions about how they're going to deploy their players. But it does also give them a very steady, reliable, and most importantly, a guy who's typically always been available from a health standpoint. Got to give them a ton of steady quality play at the point, which they did not have last year, and should have them be a better team this year because of it.
Regardless of what else is on the Wizards roster, it was surprising that they didn't come to terms on a short-term deal. I think there's a couple of things that were an issue. One is that if he signed a 1-year deal, there would have been a bird rights situation, and he would have potentially had veto power. And under the new rules, the team can get him to waive it, and I'm not sure he would want to waive it. Quite frankly, if he's taken up a short-term deal, he may want to control where he might go. Secondly, I think that we're in a spot right now where the league is, learning how to use this new CBA and, signing guys to 1-year contracts that they are going to potentially be used as a human trade exception is going to become a thing. And there may be some downsides to that. And so now I think what Tyus is doing is he's having he's rebuilding his value. He wasn't, for better or worse, and that wasn't like he had a bad year last year, but his value wasn't in a situation where teams were willing to make him a priority, teams with cap space. So, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's hoping to do what Kelly Oubre and Derek Jones did last summer.
And you do that with teams that win.
Yeah.
If you're going to, it's hard to rebuild your value playing on a team that's not good. And so if you're going to take a discount, you're going to try to do it in a spot where you can, and it's exactly like Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre actually, I thought, had a pretty decent year 2 years ago with Charlotte. There was nobody on the market who wanted him, and he had to go have a value rebuild year, and he did, on a team that was a winning team. So
Derek Jones Jr. last year was a same deal, a late. I think Jones might have been an August signing.
He was. Both Oubre and Jones were August signings.
Yeah, but Jones didn't have a very good year with Chicago 2 years ago. I mean, but you're right. In general, you're right.
But a late summer, by the NBA calendar at least, signing where you
couldn't have been that bad because the two teams trying to sign him were Dallas and the Boston Celtics. So couldn't have had that bad of a year.
But a chance to play a significant role in a team that has a chance to win, and like you said, be able to rebuild value. And obviously for Jones, it was very important for him to have the assurance that he's going to be in a starting lineup. I think that's one of the main reasons why. Memphis probably does that trade regardless because they've been, Marcus Smart's a guy who they liked a lot, but I think that's one of the reasons kind of his time in Memphis was up because he didn't want to be the league's best backup point guard anymore.
I get it. I think Achua, it's a backup center position. I don't know if it's worth spending a lot of time on it, but the Knicks needed someone in that spot. And, Achua played well in that spot last year, I thought. So that was good business for them. And
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have the typical size you'd normally want, in terms of what Tom Thibodeau's looking for, but they don't have a lot of options at the moment from that
Well,
standpoint. And
they can
it's,
throw out very long lineups with him.
yes,
With like an Anunoby and a Bridges. And
you could do some all switch lineups. Yeah, like you could do a lot of different stuff. And I mean, especially given the other options that were available, he's by far the best player left. He gives them another salary to potentially put in trades at $6 million. So but easily a good move for them given the circumstances. And they had his bird rights from being on the team last year, and getting him back was good. Good piece of business for the Knicks.
yeah, and we just mentioned the whole thing about bird rights, but it sounds like I think I don't know who reported it. I'm a little bit behind because I'm overseas, but that he did waive his bird rights veto on that.
Yeah,
So
a few different people did.
So he could in fact be used in a trade for the Knicks if needed. But not that the Knicks are thinking about trading him right now, but that's some housekeeping to keep up. So all right, Bontemps, you're on the move in Europe. And I'm on the move between Lille and Paris. So we by the way, I went to the women's game against Japan. They are an absolute machine. They played probably a B minus game and won by 25 or 26 against the team that won the silver in the last Olympics. It was, watching them is amazing.
I did have one other Olympics related topic I wanted to pick your brain about.
Yeah.
Didn't Joel Embiid have a little media availability?
He did. It was very little.
Tell us about that. Because it's been a rough go for Embiid, especially there in France.
So he did talk to us today. It's the first time he talked to us in France since they got here to France. He is getting booed aggressively when he's doing anything on the court, touching the ball, because the French are well aware that he got French citizenship and could have played for their team and didn't. And he was asked today about what his thoughts were on that, and he said nothing. Literally said the word nothing. He said, "I'm an American. I play for Team USA. There's nothing else to say." And he was asked today what he's learning from FIBA basketball, what he can take. I think actually what he can take away from playing FIBA basketball, and he said nothing. Literally the word nothing. I'm not taking anything away. I think he was just there so he could say that he talked to the media. He actually did play well in the last two exhibition games when there was a lot of focus on the way the U.S. was struggling. He did play well, and then he got sick and he missed a couple of days, and I'm not sure how much it affected him, but he did not perform well in that game against Serbia.
Well, you know what he contributed against Serbia? Nothing.
That's about true. He did have a couple of plays, but the way this team is structured, ball stopping, it sort of sticks out on their offense. And I'm not saying that's why Jayson Tatum didn't play, but sometimes Tatum stops the ball a little bit too.
I mean, it tends to happen with superstars. You mentioned Ant has that.
And Ant does it. Like if you would say to me, well, if you're going to not play Tatum because he stops the ball, what do you say about Ant? I don't have a good answer for that because Ant does it even maybe more. But and look, by the way, LeBron stops the ball.
Of course he does.
So it's not as simple as saying, well, they don't really want ball stoppers, but with Embiid, who plays low and plays slow, their offense looks a little bit more dynamic when the floor is more spread and the ball moves a little bit more. And
and he is dealing with a little bit of a public relations mess. I mean, I gotta wonder if in hindsight he wishes he wouldn't have done the I'm an international free agent, recruiting tour type of thing that he did. Especially knowing these Olympics were going to be in France, and it is kind of a slap in the face of the French to get your passport there and kind of have that flirtation and be like, nope, I'm gonna go
it is a very unique experience. It's a very unique situation that we've never really seen anything like that before.
Yeah, because
Um,
typically you don't have free agency, and
I know. I
yeah,
know.
I guess you do to a certain extent. Like,
The one thing I'll
you know,
say is
teams
You know, it
recruit.
doesn't happen with Team USA very often.
Yes,
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the unique part of it. It happens overseas all the time. Doesn't
Right.
happen here.
The only thing I'll say is Joel has spent his entire adult life basically in the US. So when he says I'm an American, he's
He's also
right.
actually an American citizen.
Right.
Sure.
You know,
He
But
became
the
an
point
American
is-
citizen.
the point is,
Yeah.
why'd you go through the whole process of getting the French passport?
I know.
Like, I get
And
why the
that's what
people in France aren't
yeah.
happy with them.
I get it. I get it. But him playing for France would have been a lot more awkward in
Oh,
terms
look,
of free agency than playing for the US.
Listen, they still would be unhappy with him if he had just thought about playing for France and thought about playing for Team USA and then played for Team USA. No, none of these fans know that he got
They
a
would have been
passport.
upset. They would have been
That's
upset
right.
with him if he didn't play
They're
at
mad.
all.
Boris
they're mad
Diaw,
he's
though,
not-
has expressed displeasure with the way the whole.
I understand that.
Not
I'm
just
just
the
saying listen, I know that. I'm just saying the fans at the game are not booing because he got a passport. They're booing because he's not playing for France in the home Olympics for France. That's all. Like,
Yeah.
again, like Joel has not played overall to the level that I'm sure he would like to. I'm sure there's still 2 or 3 weeks left of this, 2 weeks left of this thing. I'm sure he'll have some good games here over the next couple of weeks. I would also again remind everyone we're finding things to talk about when they beat probably the third best team in the world by 30.
Yeah.
All this stuff is sort of manufactured controversy.
If
all the way
Embiid is the
around.
one dropped from the rotation, is that going to be a massive issue?
Well, given
Not-
It's a hypothetical. It's not going to happen, but would it be a
yeah,
massive?
I mean, it certainly would have a chance to be an issue. I would say if based off of the way he was recruited and sold on what his role was going to be, I think he was probably promised more than anybody else on the team, I would say. So
I would just
don't
say
know.
based on merit to this point, you can make the argument that if somebody's got to get left out,
I agree, but it's not like Jayson Tatum was averaging 17 points and shooting 55% from the field. Jayson
True as
Tatum,
well.
I mean, he's played better than Embiid, but not like, dramatically better. So we'll see. Maybe Tatum will score 17 against South Sudan and, people
Probably
shove-
will. He'll probably play great.
By the way, he didn't play well in the exhibition games, but he played his best game against South Sudan. It's a more comfortable match. Not that he doesn't have to worry about comfortable matchups, but
right?
the matchups against South Sudan, Tatum is a better fit than against. He can fit against anybody, but
Yeah. What are we doing here? What are
I
we
know,
doing
I
here?
know.
You're
You're
feeding into this
I
insane
know,
narrative
I
to
know.
begin with.
I know.
It's not about narratives or not about fit. They just made a decision. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, everybody.
Yeah.
Jayson Tatum's still awesome. It's going to be okay.
More decisions are upcoming. More good Olympic basketball is upcoming, and we'll be talking to you about it. Thanks to our producer Parker, who pinch hit for Jackson, who's on vacation. Thanks for Bontemps giving up some vacation time to join us. Thanks for MacMahon for being MacMahon, and thank you for listening and watching the Hoop Collective podcast. We will talk to you soon.
Adios, amigos.